What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be doing the reading wrap-up video for the month of April. If that sounds like fun for you guys, definitely stick around. I am so excited to share all of these various books with you. It's reading time here at JBay's Corner. For those of you that are new here, my name is Jaya. I put out videos every Wednesday and Sunday on bookish related content with a little smattering of randomness here and there. If that sounds like something you may enjoy, you're definitely in the right place, because here in my little corner of the internet, we definitely have a fiction addiction problem. So we just read a lot here in this corner, and we support the obsession and unhealthiness that can come from becoming too avidly invested in your books. But that's okay. That is okay. And we celebrate that here. That being said, this month's theme for me was based on some drawings that I did of prompts out of a collection of little chits that I had written out. And the reason why I did that is because I was drawing a blank as to what to read for the month of April. And the themes that ended up pulling out were dystopian novels, sci-fi, or any kind of period romance, which is a little bit all over the place. I was able to lump the dystopian and the sci-fi into one category for the most part. I had one horror sci-fi as well. And then I had all of the other period romances. There's also one other standalone book that I did end up reading for a book club that I am a part of, known as P&G. That one is Paper and Glam, run by Lisa Marie Landreth. Absolutely wonderful group of women, and I've absolutely loved reading with them. So we'll jump into those books very, very soon. I also wanted to mention that today is April 30th, and it was the official release of Devil Wears Prada 2. So here's the thing about me. I absolutely love books, but I also absolutely adore fashion. And Devil Wears Prada was a make it or break it movie when I was a younger child. I think it came out right around the time I was in high school or college. And so that movie has been with me for years and years and years. And when I now found out that the second one was coming out, that too with a killer cast and a lot of the old faces coming back again in the movie, I was like, I need to watch this movie. And my husband was sweet enough to take me. And I just wanted to share a little fit check here. So this was the final look. Makeup. I did wash my hair, so it's just a bit of a mess. It is what it is. This is the beautiful, beautiful dress that was worn tonight. I love the bat wings. And then here we have some knee-high boots. And then, of course, had to take this bag because it was Devil Wears Prada. Now, as often is true with any premiere, there are also little gimmicky things that they sometimes have at the movie theaters, and this was no different. So I actually ended up getting this little keychain. It's a Devil Wears Prada 2 keychain, and it has the sunglasses, the coffee cup, and the boots with the little devil heels. And it also says on here, Devil Wears Prada, and then it says released 2026. So I'm debating what bag to put this on. I'm thinking I could either put it on this bag where it's all matchy-matchy, lovey-dovey, or I was thinking we could have something different and put it on this bag where it's also not going to tear up the jeans. I have yet to figure out which way I'm going with that, but that was super cute and super fun, and I just wanted to share that with you guys. So outside of going to this wonderful movie, I also ended up thinking that it would be fun to mention here, because for those that don't know, Devil Wears Prada, I believe, was also a book at one point, and yeah, I was just very, very excited to go watch this movie. Now, without further ado, let's jump into the main video content, which is what everyone is here for, none other than our books. So I wanted to start with the e-reader book, which is also the book club book. And the reason I wanted to share this is because one of the prompts also, which I forgot to mention, was read on your e-reader. And so I decided that I was going to read this book on my Nook. And it was actually the book that we ended up reading for book club, which was called Storybook Ending. Give me just a second here, because apparently my Nook is having a moment and doesn't really want to jump to where I need it to jump to. So fun times. Guys. So here is the cover of that book. It was written by Moira McDonald, and at least at the Barnes & Nobles that's local to me, it is actually currently listed as one of the picks of the month. This book was super, super cute. It was a book that was basically following the story of multiple different characters throughout the course of the book. We get perspectives from a male character named Wesley. We also get character commentary from two female lead characters named April as well as Lauren. And then we also get a little bit of a, excuse me, we also get a hint of another character's perspectives. Her name is Alejandra. And it was a very, very cute story. It's basically talking about the movie store, or not the movie store, the bookstore that multiple of these characters work at or come to whenever they have a free moment to think or like anything like that. And during the course of this book, it also happens to be the setting for a film crew and a movie that's being shot. So things are a little bit chaotic, a little bit crazy. One of the premises of stories in this book is that someone decides that they're going to leave a little note in a book, hoping that one of the employees that works there happens across this note to start a secret love story, but it inadvertently ends up getting to somebody else. And so instead, they end up making good friends. There's also a storyline of what's actually happening in the film itself and opportunities that present themselves to a character. There's also a secondary romance that takes place in this book. Basically, a lot of crazy things that happen at multiple different points of view within this timeline of story that is happening as well. But it was sweet. It was very simple to read. It was cute. I don't think I would necessarily write home about this book, but I did think it was cute, and I do think it's a fun read. It also feels very like fall/late summer to me because it is very much set in a library, and I associate that with an academic period in life. So because of that, I feel like it could work for like end of summer to autumnal vibes for me personally. But I did thoroughly enjoy this book, and I thought it was super cute. And I ended up giving it a 3 stars. I also realized that many of these books are actually parts of series, and I ended up actually doing series reviews for each of the different series. So I will basically give basic gist and vibes of the storyline and not go into too much detail of each of the individual books. So there's no necessarily spoilers or anything like that, and also give my thoughts on the books for the upcoming set of books. So the first set that I want to talk about is the first and third book in a series known as Dangerous Damsels. These were written by India Holton, and this is definitely very period romance vibes. The Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels is basically following the story of Cynthia Basselthwaite as well as Ned, who is what's his last name? Ned Lightbourne, and both of them are actually within proper society in London, but they're also pirates respectively. Ned has basically been hired to assassinate/capture Miss Cynthia by 2 different pirate employers, one who wants her dead and one who wants her to be captured to be brought back to him because she's actually his daughter, but he was also the one responsible for murdering her mother. So it becomes a little complicated. And Cynthia is currently living with said father's mom, who basically took her in after the death of the mom. And so Cynthia has been very protected, but her whole goal in life is to basically end up within the Wisteria Society. A bunch of craziness actually ends up ensuing in the course of the book, and they go through multiple adventures as they're basically running away from these various characters that are trying to commit murder or are trying to capture them. But overall, very sweet, very fun book. It was highly entertaining and I enjoyed it thoroughly. The romance is also very cute, very sweet, and I do think all the spicy moments in this book were very well placed. Overall, really enjoyed this book, ended up giving it a 4 stars. And then we have the third book in the series called The Secret Service of Tea and Treason. This is basically following 2 characters that belong to the organization AUNT, which is basically a government organization that trains spies who then can infiltrate people's homes and gather information or protect the crown by basically acting as maid and butler servants within the household. In the course of this, we have the 2 top operatives who are Alice and David Bixby to be exact, and Alice's last name, I don't know if we're ever given Alice's last name, but Alice end up being forced into a project together, and they're basically trying to but they're trying to confiscate, claim a stolen good, which they are concerned about because it may be a threat to the Queen of England. And so they are tasked to basically find this and infiltrate this pirate party. And in the process, they basically say that they're a married couple and that they are pirates themselves, and they have to basically role play in order to find this weapon as well as save the Queen, while simultaneously also trying to appease the pirate women so that they can slip in to their little shindig without being recognized. Very cute book, very fun. I also loved this one. This was a solid 4-star read for me. I realize I'm being a little vague with what these storylines are about, but also doing that on purpose because I do want you to enjoy the books if you do choose to read them, but also because I already have another video coming out with full details on what the series is about. The next set of books that I ended up reading within the world of historical and period romances were A Lady's Guide to Fortune and A Lady's Guide to Scandal by Sophie Irwin. These books are basically following women in the times of English gentlemen and gentlewomen, and in the first book we basically have a woman who is responsible for 4 younger sisters, but her parents have unfortunately passed away, and so she's orphaned, and she had a good marriage match on the market, but then that marriage ends up falling through, and the man she was supposed to be marrying ends up engaged to another woman, and so now she has to figure out how to find a gentleman of fortune that she can marry so that she can safely protect their home, pay off the debts, and also make sure that her sisters are taken care of. However, through the course of this, she ends up accidentally crossing paths with Lord Radcliffe, who vehemently does not want her marrying his younger brother, so inadvertently finds himself in a position where he agrees to help her find this perfect match. And through the course of the book, we just see their wittiness and their banter and how they get along, and the story progresses from there. This book was super cute. It was very, very sweet. It's closed door romance, which was awesome. Actually, I loved the fact that there wasn't too much spice, and the focus of the romance was more based on their actual banter, which made this book extra special. I did really love this one, and I ended up giving it a solid 4 stars. As far as A Lady's Guide to Scandal goes, however, I did enjoy this one a lot more. This is following the story of a young woman who was recently widowed. She was married to someone who was many, many, many years her senior, and she now inadvertently finds herself with a windfall of multiple homes and increased cash flow. So she's sitting at about £10,000 per month that's coming into her, coming into her pocket, which is insane and marks her as very, very rich. So once she finds out this information, there is a morality clause to what she can and cannot do in order to keep this money in her pocket, but she is essentially allowed to go through her mourning period in one of those said properties, away from her parents and away from the family, and she takes her lovely cousin with her. The book is also a bit of a love triangle because during the course of the book, she is reacquainted with her childhood love, who she was invested in marrying, but ends up marrying his uncle instead, and that is Mr. Somerset. And then she also ends up meeting a dual siblings, basically a male and a female, who are of prestigious regard and lineage, but their parentage, because one of the parents is of Indian descent, makes them slightly outcasts in the society, but at the same time they have so much scandal around them, and they have so many texts that they've written. One of them has written books, the other one has written poetry, and both of them are notoriously beautiful, and also the male in particular is known to be a rake and someone who is of beautiful looks and like very, very tall, very like charming and all such things. Like everybody wants to know them, but not necessarily want their names entwined or associated with them. And so he ends up asking our main female character to basically do a portrait of him, which is not something that women typically do at this time and age. And so she ends up in a position where she gets to know him better. And now we have this little love triangle that's happening. But the thing that I loved about this book the most is the fact that our main female lead character really becomes a woman and finds her independence and her voice throughout the course of this book. And I think that was the most special part of this book for me, is I love the fact that, especially in a time frame where women were repressed, these characters are allowed to discover their own voice. And it was also really fun seeing how she did that. And I also love the relationship between her and her cousin Margaret, who was also her best friend and who is currently living in Bath with her as she's going through her mourning period. And it was just really sweet to see their storyline as well. Overall, I really enjoyed this book. I actually ended up giving this one a 4.5 stars. Moving in to the final set of books that I ended up reading within the period romance collection of books, I read the A League of Extraordinary Women series by Evie Dunmore, which basically is a collection of 4 separate stories following the stories of 4 women who basically meet at the Oxford campus and end up banding together in order for supporting women's rights, which do not currently exist in Britain and are basically huge members of the women's suffragette movement. Now, through the course of this, we are also following their love story. In the first book, we're following the story of Annabelle, a young girl who comes from a lower class family, not that she does not have any genteel blood in her, but she's still very blue collar compared to the aristocracy. And she is beautiful, she is gorgeous, but she has a little bit of scandal attached to her name. So her family doesn't really know what to do with her. When she gets the opportunity to go to Oxford, she basically is told by her older brother that, hey, you can go as long as you are able to pay for the maid who will be taking your place because you've been doing all the household chores. And if you can successfully do this and your name is not tangled with any kind of scandal again, you're welcome to go to university. So off she goes to university, and then she happens to meet the Duke. And through the course of this book, the Duke and her have very enemies to lovers kind of vibes. They start off on the very wrong foot when she basically approaches him for the suffragette movement. And then secondarily, when he thinks that she has her eyes on his younger brother, which was never the case. But as the book progresses and they are forced into a proximity with one another, they actually learn that there's a lot of goodness in both of the characters, and they do have a lot of romantic attraction towards one another. And then they start to explore that side within this book as well. My only qualm with this book is I feel like Annabelle's suffragette component and like what she was doing for the women's movement was very much minuscule in this book. I think there was a lot more commentary on the romantic story between the 2 main characters. So that did bother me a little bit, but I do feel like her character redeems itself in the rest of the books because she does play a larger role in the suffragette movement. But overall, this was a solid 3-star read for me. The next book in the series is called A Rogue of One's Own. This one is probably one of my absolute favorites in the series. It is following the story of Lucy. She's kind of the head suffragette. She's pushing everyone towards this just cause, and she feels like because she's doing that, she's going to be a spinster for her entire life. She has a romantic interest named Tristan Valentine. This is a childhood second chance romance between the 2 of them as they have known each other when they were children. And overall, the story was very sweet. It was very fun. I also feel like there was a lot more happening in this book. It was a very fast-paced book, so I did appreciate that as well. And there's a lot of drama that ensues throughout the course of this book. But I do feel like overall it was really fun and it was really cute. And it was just such a fun time reading these 2 characters. And this one, again, was probably one of my favorites. It was a 4.5-star read for me. And again, I'm purposely being vague about these books because I do have series reviews for them. Otherwise, we will be here for over 2 hours. The next book in the series was Portrait of a Scottsman. This is following the story of Hattie, or Charlotte. She is the middle daughter to youngest daughter of a very wealthy gentleman who's like very well renowned in the financial space. He owns a bunch of different businesses and things like that. And the rest of his family is very invested in the portfolios and things like that. But Charlotte actually suffers from dyslexia, which means that she can't quite tap in at the same level that everybody else does because her brain thinks in a different way. Not to say that she's not smart and not to say that she's not capable and definitely not to say that she doesn't know what's going on. It's just that her family doesn't recognize it. So she believes that her future is basically set in just getting married. She always wants to feel important and she wants to make a difference, which is how she ends up in the women's suffragette group and becomes friends with the other 3 girls. And then because of her name and her father's affluence, she is able to get them opportunities and things like that. But throughout the course of the book, we also learned that Hattie is an avid artist. She's a phenomenal painter and she also really enjoys photography. So she decides she's going to go to Lucian's house, who is our main male character. Lucian Blackstone is of a very dark reputation. He is not necessarily seen as someone that people in good company should keep. However, because he's an extremely powerful man and an extremely wealthy man, a lot of the genteel crowd actually has a lot of fear and respect towards him. He has pretty much all the secrets on everybody within the gentleman space, and he's basically lended money to a lot of these people, so he's able to cash in on secrets whenever he feels like it to either basically break these people if they deserve to be broken in his regard, or is able to get more bang for his buck, if you will, or has power over these characters, which opens up doors for him. So he's not exactly someone that people always regard in the highest state. Now, in the beginning of the book, because of an unfortunate situation that occurs, Hattie basically ends up having to marry this man. And once that happens, the story basically follows the true revelation of who both these characters are and their love story. And it takes place in a completely different location than England. It's taking place in Scotland, and you also get to see a lot more in the working class. That was very interesting to me. I really enjoyed this book, and I do think it was a very, very sweet story and ending. I ended up giving this story a solid 4 stars. Next up, we are going into our dystopian / sci-fi vibe, and I ended up doing young adult for this, and it is none other than the Marissa Meyer Lunar Chronicles series. And now I have done a full series review for this. Again, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but essentially the vibes of these books is that there is a few different things happening. One, there is a plague on Earth that is basically affecting humans and causing them to die, and there's no known cure in Earth for this particular condition. Number 2, there are 2 different, so there's Earth as a whole, and then there's all of the different countries on Earth who have come to a peace agreement. And then there's Luna, which is basically a capital that exists on the moon. Luna has lunar individuals, and the lunar queen, Levin, is known to be tyrannical and insane and crazy and power hungry, but because of her lunar power, she can also manipulate many, many people around them and basically affect the way that they think, forcing her own people to believe they love her and all of these other things. And she now wants control of Earth. She believes she can achieve this by marrying the crown prince or the king of the Commonwealth Empire, which is basically located in China. Number 3, all of these books are going to be based on various young grim tales. So we have, and like Walt Disney stories. So we have Cinderella as one of the inspirations. We have Red Riding Hood and the Big Bad Wolf in one of the inspirations. We also have Rapunzel as one of the inspirations. And then last but not least, we have Snow White as one of the inspirations. In the course of the story, we also discovered that Cinder is the lost princess, and so she is basically expected to overthrow her aunt. She also ends up picking up ragtag characters throughout the course of the other books as well, until they create a team that are basically going to start a resistance and overthrow the queen. Her primary love interest ends up being the prince. And in the first book, Cinder, we are basically going to see the story of Cinderella repeated in this story. So we have an evil stepmother, we have 2 stepsisters, we have Cinder kind of not knowing where she's coming from or her background and basically treating like a slave, and then still ending up connecting with the prince and all the blah, 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 blah. So that's Cinder. Scarlett is basically following the story of a young woman who is actually the daughter of a retired military agent, and that her grandmother was responsible for saving the princess back in the day when they had originally thought that she had died. And they find out that how she is alive and able to oppose the Lunar Queen. Scarlett is a very, very fiery, redheaded young woman who's basically on her search for a grandma, and in the process she meets a main character named Wolf, who is a genetically engineered soldier created by Levin and the Lunar Monarchy in order to basically create elite soldiers that only listen to the lunar people and can rip anyone to shreds if they wanted to. Now, Wolf wants to break control of this very, very direly and ends up pairing up with Scarlett, trying to quote-unquote save her grandma. Very, very cute book, very sweet. Scarlett's character irritated me just a little bit, but I go into that more in my series review, but I do think this was a very powerful book, and I don't think Cinder could have accomplished what she needed to do without Scarlett in the long run, so this was still a very fun book to read. Then we have Cress, which is the story of Rapunzel. Essentially, we have our main character who is a lunar shell, basically meaning that she cannot be manipulated. And for this reason, she and many other children who are like her have been taken by the queen, and basically their blood cells were messed with and they were treated like petri dishes in order to create certain things and antidotes and all this type of stuff. Biowarfare, if you will. And so through that process, Cress also, while she's on her own, finds out that she has skills within working on computer systems and technology and things like that. She then ends up being taken on by the queen's primary advisor, who is also evil in her own right. And such, Cress is basically kept in a ship and locked up in her tower of ship, if you will. And she's never been able to escape. Throughout the course of the book, she does eventually escape. She ends up pairing up with Cinder and their team, and she ends up becoming very close to Captain Thorn, who is a thief come prince, who is not prince, but thief come hero, who is basically helping Cinder succeed and is the reason that Cinder was able to escape from a very precarious situation when she is arrested in the first book. So that story was very cute to read, and it was also really interesting to see Cress's role in being able to manipulate both earthen as well as lunar technology, allowing the entire company to succeed in their course throughout the series. And then last but not least, we have the story of Winter. In this book, Winter is our primary main character outside of the other crew, and she is the stepdaughter of Levin. She is considered to be one of the most beautiful humans / lunars to ever walk the earth, and the moon. And so because of this, like, her stepmother, Levin, is very, very, very jealous and forces her to self-mutilate. Also puts her through so many different situations where she is now suffering for like little bit of PTSD, a little bit of schizophrenic type of behavior. And she is very much the story of Snow White. You do essences of Snow White throughout the course of this book. But this book is also very powerful because it also is when everything culminates. Basically, you have the final revolution, you have the war, all of those things take place in the course of Winter. And it was a very interesting storyline because it's the one that allows us to really see Luna in and of itself, which we haven't really been introduced to in the previous books. Most of the other books took place on Earth, and this one actually does take place on the moon, which was fun. So there's lots of different components of this book that were really interesting. There was also one scene in this book that was almost like a carbon copy of a scene from one of my favorite scenes from the Lord of the Rings trilogy. And I thought that was really interesting too, the way that the author weaved it into the book. But I do think overall it was a fun book to read, and I did end up decently enjoying this book. I also had my qualms with this book as well, but definitely watch the book review to hear more of my thoughts if you're interested. Overall, it was a great series, and I did end up giving it a solid 4 stars as a whole for the entirety of the series. There were some books in here that were 3 stars for me. There were some books in here that were 4 stars for me just because of the pacing, the way the story was written, some of the choices the characters make. But I had to continuously remind myself that these are young adults who are in their teen years, and so that's why they make some of the decisions they make. But while it did, in some occasions, cause me grief, for the most part, I did enjoy the series quite a bit. And if you are interested, like I said, in learning more, definitely check out the review video when it releases. The last book that I ended up reading, which is actually a sci-fi / horror book, is the very, very classic Stepford Wives. This was written by Levin, and it was such a haunting read. Even though I knew what was going to happen in this book because of previous exposure to the film, I actually noticed there were quite a few differences between the book and the movie, which leads me to my next thought. I do think eventually I will be doing a video where I want to compare the books themselves to the movies that are released and see how many things are similar, how many things are different. And I just think that could be a really fun vibe. Let me know if that's something that you guys may be interested in. I would love to read your comments. But I really, really enjoyed Stepford Wives. It was one of those books that was like bone-numbingly chilling as I was reading through the book, and it was just such an interesting read. And I do think there is definitely a place for it in today's society in terms of commentary on what it's trying to say about dystopian societies and ideologies and things like that. I think overall it was just a fun read, and I actually ended up giving it a 4 stars. I definitely see myself even potentially increasing that to a 5 stars, and I loved the book so much I had to order the hard copy version of this book because it was one of those books that I feel like is like Valley of the Dolls. Like, it's one of those books where you read it and it just hits home so hard, and it has so much commentary on society and all these other things wrapped up in such an interesting little pink bow that it was just too cool to not have. And I really, really, really cannot say enough about this book. It's also very short. It's only 123 pages. But the premises of the story, in case you have not seen the movies or heard of the book before, is essentially that there is a town called Stepford where a young couple moved to. They have 2 children, and the husband and wife have basically moved into this town. She is an avid fighter for women's rights, and he is a lawyer. He does very well in his profession. For the most part, both of them have been on the same page, but then the husband ends up joining the boys club. And when he joins the boys club, and the wife Joanna ends up settling down into the town herself, she starts noticing that there's a little change in her husband Walter's behavior, and that he seems to be more boyish, if you will, in certain choices and decisions that he's making. And she feels like the people of the town are very, very robotic and very, very like 1950s, typical housewife, perfect housewife vibes. And it feels almost creepy, and her biggest concern in the beginning of the book is like what's going on, and as the book progresses she starts to realize that her turn may be coming next for her to become one of these mindless, void, sex doll women that seems to be populating all of Stepford. It's a very interesting read. It's definitely, I would say, psychological thriller horror type of vibes, and it's definitely an interesting commentary on society, and it's done in such a simple and eloquent way, and I just think Ira did a phenomenal job with this book. I do see myself potentially picking up other works by this author as well, but I can definitely see why it's considered a classic within its genres and why it was turned into film adaptations not once but actually twice. And yeah, absolutely adored this book. And that does bring us to the end of this video. If you guys ended up sitting through this entire video and watching it, thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your support. I know it's a lot, and I know time is very precious, so I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to me ramble and talk all things books with you guys. I really enjoyed all the books that I read this month, and I realized that it was paper sheets that decided what I was going to read. But hey, it was fun. I'm actually trying something very new for the month of May. I'm going to be reading graphic novels primarily, and I've never really done that before. So super excited about that. Just started my first manga, and I'm really enjoying it so far. So I think it's going to be a fun, loving time. So I will catch up with you guys soon in regards to that. But I just wanted to say, if you guys are new here and you did enjoy this video content and you like all things book with a little bit of randomness here and there, definitely consider hitting that subscribe button and that notification bell and becoming a part of our book loving family. We would love to have you here at JB's Corner with us. And for those of you who are tried and true here from the beginning and sticking with me, I truly appreciate every single one of you. I would not be able to do this without you guys. And it's not even about like monetization or any of those things. It's strictly about the fact that like I just love the fact that there is a community of people out there who are so supportive of reading and actually want to talk all things books. And for each and every single one of you, I appreciate you so much. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for the views, and also for leaving comments. I truly appreciate the comments. I love reading them. I love responding to them. So please, please, please continue doing that. And let me know what your thoughts are, everybody, on these books, whether you liked them, whether you don't think you'll ever read them again. If there's a specific genre you guys want me to read or you think I should delve into, definitely let me know. And I just can't tell you enough how grateful I am that you guys take the time to watch these videos. That being said, wherever you are in the world, whether it's morning, evening, or night, I hope every single one of you are feeling safe, secure, and loved, and that you're getting plenty of time for self-care and reading. I will catch you guys on the next video. Bye, guys.